So it is really a pleasure to be here this afternoon. And I thank the Media Institute of the Caribbean, as well as the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, and of course, our umbrella colleagues, UNESCO and other organizations that are responsible for coordinating this workshop. So I will attempt to share my screen because I will apologize because I've been attending meetings Japan time every night for the week, and I didn't get to prepare my presentation until today. So I will just seek to share my screen and you can advise me if you are seeing it well. It looks that way. Please
yes,
show
we can see it.
Yes. So it is really a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, and I represent the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center, as you said. So I am not able to see your audience, but I did take in a little bit of yesterday's presentations, and I must say that it's always a pleasure because, you know, even in our role, we often, the media is one of the groups, the stakeholders that we try as much as possible to engage, to influence, and these opportunities are always very much a pleasure. And I listened. It was also nice to listen to what you, the media, how you present. I think the presentation I listened to was in relation to a gentleman who was head of the media agency, and he was reporting on when one of his junior reporters had to report on a credit card story. So just to hear also the political and the other pressures that you're under from other agencies and influences in our society. So it's quite interesting, and I think we do share much of the same constraints. So I'm glad to be here, and I just wanted also to indicate that. So this afternoon, I am hoping to provide you with a very interesting and interactive presentation. I wasn't clear how your presentations run, but I think on a Friday afternoon, 1:30 Jamaica time, 2:30 Barbados time, I don't plan to be too formal. So I wanted, Madam Chair, you can advise me to just provide some slides, and of course, as I said, to a level of interaction if needed as we go through, but definitely as you come to the end, I welcome any questions or comments through you, Chair. So tsunamis, and thank you. So tsunamis in the Caribbean. We are the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. You are the media. We see you as a key partner to get our information out to the public. You yourselves have to be informed, and you therefore need to engage widely. In addition to that, there's a measure of credibility, as my first slide says. What is the role of the media? Debunking, fact-checking, public information. This is from our end. So one of the things that we encountered very early on, and still do encounter, tsunamis do not occur in the Caribbean. Why then should we worry? What does the media say on that? We have the hard evidence. It has not occurred. Significant tsunamis have not occurred in our lifetime, but rest assured, between up to 1630 and even beyond that, we have experienced over 65 tsunamis in the region that have caused over 4,000 deaths. And sometimes as we go through our work, it is very important that we highlight this because many of the persons that we are obviously engaging at this moment would not have experienced tsunamis. And I hasten to say that that's not only from the community, that often comes from other national authorities not deeply engaged in disaster risk reduction. And especially when we started our regional tsunami warning system in 2005, much from the political directorate as well. So we did have a lot of influencing to do. Another question we're often asked, tsunamis are so infrequent, why worry? Again, this has been raised at all levels. And again, many member states say, well, the incidence of tsunamis have been so low. Why don't we seek to put our resources in another hazard, the hurricane, storm surge, erosion, sargassum, why tsunamis don't occur that frequently? And we will see that out of the world's percentages as it relates to tsunamis, much of the tsunami occurrences have been in the Pacific Ocean, and the Caribbean accounts for at least 10%. But we would hasten to say that it is not only the hazard and the risk that it poses, the level of vulnerability. In the Caribbean, many of our member states have actually built their economies on the coastline, and because much of our economic development is based on tourism, is based on trading from traditional practices, and therefore much we have in terms of our vulnerability. Many of our settlements are concentrated on the coastline or major capital cities, and much of our critical infrastructure, hospitals, etc., are also located on the coastline. And therefore, it is not so much the infrequency of the event, but the vulnerability as well that we have to consider. Another myth, and this is all, rather than coming to tell you how tsunamis are formed and, and this kind of scientific humdrum, I wanted to bring it to you in a way that these are some of the key elements, the community perceptions, which is what we have engaged and which you, the media as well, are accustomed to engage in. And this is where some of we think that the general support can be partnered and encouraged. So tsunamis are just one wave. Indeed not. I think if we have been clued in in 2004, December 26th, to the Indian Ocean, if we have been clued in as recently as the Hunga Tonga, we will see that tsunamis are not just one wave. There are a series of waves. It can happen over hours, and we really need to have that embedded within the psyche of our populations. And in addition to that, one of the things as we get into the early warning and the natural warning signs is that we need to also impress upon our populations that they need to wait until we get this all clear. Because of the fact that it can go on for hours, you may have periods where there's no wave happening and people think that it's okay to return. No, because we have our instrumentation, we have working, and when we get into the Caribbean early warning system, you will get an idea as to how it works. And we have our warning centers and so on who are monitoring and detecting to determine when it is safe for us to go back to the coastline. The first wave is the largest. Indeed not. Again, our evidence is very clear. And therefore, persons may experience a certain wave height at the first wave, and they may think, okay, well, I can withstand that. And tsunamis occur quite frequently in the Caribbean. And as we look at tsunamis, really the tsunami is a displacement of the water. So if you have an earthquake, generally over 6.5, and it occurs close enough to the shore at the coastline, it can generate a tsunami. The 2010 Haiti earthquake did generate a tsunami. It was a few centimeters, but the momentum, the mechanism was a tsunami. And therefore, persons may, as we said, very much survive the first wave because it can be very, very small, but the other waves can be larger. And remember, as we said, it is not one, it can go on for a series of waves that can go on for hours. So that's the kind of information that we need to get out to the public, and of course that we encourage the media also to be aware of. Now we have what we call natural warning signs, and there are at least 3 very clear natural warning signs that have been established by science, but these do not necessarily have to occur. And in addition to that, they may not all occur. One may occur and not the other. So the natural warning signs would be if the water recedes an unusual distance away from the coastline, if you are hearing a loud roar coming from the ocean, and of course, if you are seeing, so hear, see, run, if you are seeing the waves as well. So the water does not always recede. And these are things that we have to practice. And essentially, if you are at the beach and you feel a very strong shaking for a period of time, that is time to run. And we have to inculcate this within our public as well. The larger the earthquake, the faster the tsunami will travel? No, because we have we have three classifications of tsunamis. We have our local tsunami, which we have our local tsunami, which occurs within 100 kilometers of the coastline. We also have the regional tsunami, which occurs, which occurs within 100 to 1,000 kilometers away from the affected coastline. And we have our distant tsunamis that occur over 1,000 kilometers. And of course, if there's a local tsunami, meaning it occurs very close to the coastline, those waves will reach you very quickly. But between the difference of the regional and the distant tsunami occurring much further away, there are a number of factors that play that determine how quickly the waves will reach us. It depends on the what we call the bathymetry, so the shape and how smooth the bottom of the sea is, just to give you the basic language and so on, which obviously if there's friction and so on, the waves will take a little longer. They're not going to be as, they would form some battering, so they would not be as concentrated or well formed, as opposed to if your bathymetry is very smooth and so on. So there are a number of factors that can play in this. And I would just hasten to say that the presentation will be made available, and I will also complement it with some additional resources, because I appreciate our time is limited in terms of the presentation. So I would also say, I'm just a little hamstrung by the titles, so that there will be enough time before the tsunami impacts in order to issue the warning. And as I said, that is not always the case, because if there is a local tsunami, it may not occur. You may not be able to see, you may not be able to issue that warning, before the tsunami occurs. And again, we look at the fact that tsunamis are only caused by earthquakes. That is definitely not the case. And very clearly we see that the volcanic eruptions can cause tsunamis, landslides can cause tsunamis. In addition to that, we also have tsunamis that can be caused by meteors, and we also have the meteo tsunamis that we are having under investigation. I am by no means a scientist, but I will say to you that there has been evidence that within the whole matter of met hazards, that because of the confluence of tides, of wind pressure and other mechanisms, that tsunamis have occurred in meteo hazards as well. So if I can also go into, I believe this might be our last or second to last penultimate myth, that if a tsunami does occur, you would be able to drive off. And that is not what we advocate. We advocate for to use evacuation by foot. And because, of course, we recognize that there will be gridlock. And you know, if just by a mere traffic jam, you can get along sometimes a lot faster by foot, in terms of bicycle or cycling, motorcycle and so on, but we still advocate more along foot. And the key thing as well is that as we go through some of our programs that I will highlight to you as well, Tsunami Ready and so forth, there are many, we actually plot the evacuation routes, and this is at the community level. And many of our routes sometimes can be uphill and by foot. It can be steps, which is because we time the fastest way to get to that safe zone or that assembly point. And oftentimes the fastest way is by foot and uphill by steps and so on. So that's why we also advocate for persons not to use vehicles, because access and speed is what you need and efficiency to get to that safe zone. Okay, so we're also going to look at, I'm having a little challenge seeing my screen. So, okay, there's nothing we can do to survive a tsunami. And as I and introduce you to the Tsunami Ready program, we hope that you can appreciate that there is hope. And what we do is obviously we try to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And the Tsunami Ready program, we will go into it in a little more detail, but this is a program that has been piloted in the Caribbean, and it's now an international program being led by IOC UNESCO. And there are 12 what we call indicators that countries have to, countries, whether they're doing it at the country level or community level, they have to fulfill in order to be deemed tsunami ready. So we have a few communities as well, and I will go through this slide a little more in detail later, but I want to also highlight to you the sign on the right hand of the screen, which is the natural warning signs, as I spoke to you about it, and it's basically encouraging the population to know the natural warning signs. Again, if you feel you're at the coast and you feel a very strong earthquake or shaking, you run. If you see the water withdraw an unusual distance, we encourage you to also run. And if you hear a strange roar, and our mantra is run to high ground or inland if any of these signs occur, because as we said in the myth, all of them may or may not occur. And I know that sometimes many of the questions that are asked of the public and also the media would be run to where? So we are going to look at the Tsunami Ready program and identify some of what the support is in that regard. So I just wanted also to introduce you to the Tsunami Early Warning System. And the UNESCO IOC is the only body in the UN system responsible for ocean science. Established in 1960, we have 150 member states. And we are very much involved in the key areas of sustainable development and governance, ocean research, early warning systems, capacity development, education, and communication, policy making, as well as observing and data management. So I think we are one of the key agencies as it relates to working with our partners internationally, regionally, nationally, and also the local stakeholders to bring the measure of early warning systems as it relates to tsunamis and other coastal hazards. I am not sure, Madam Chair, if you want me to stop at any moment or if I can continue, because I'm not seeing the participants. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments so far.
We have one question related to Kikamjani and
okay.
Tsunamis. So, I don't like to take that now.
Would you wish me to take it now or should we wait until the end?
You can do it now if you'd like, since we've stopped already.
Very well. Yes.
So I think the question is really it's in the chat.
Okay.
Is Kikamjani the worst tsunami concern for us in the region?
Okay. I would say, as I said initially, I am not a scientist, but what the modeling in terms of Kikamjani, and you can see this information from the Seismic Research Center's websites and so on. We are, and also Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. Our risks to tsunamis are actually within the region and outside of the region. And I wouldn't say that the Kikimjeni is our worst risk because, as I said, it's based on our risk is seismic, so it can be related to earthquake occurrences. And if you have been following the feeds, the information coming out from USGS, from SRC, and so on, you would see that we are having significant earthquake activity in the region every day. Our protocols indicate that earthquakes occurring at a magnitude of 6.5 or greater, less than 70 kilometers from the Earth's surface, and also very close to the coastline, as we said, within 100 kilometers, dependent as well on the nature of how the earthquake has occurred, can result in tsunamis. And we experience these daily. They may not be 6.5, but some of them, as you would note, are 6.5 and above. And I think we experience these more often and with more continuity than eruptions that may be occurring or activity that may be recorded at Kikimjeni. So I think that can answer your question to some extent in terms of the worst. We also have other active volcanoes within the region that can and that are close enough to the coast that can generate and have potential for tsunamis occurring. And the last eruption 3 years ago was actually just a very clear example of that. We have Montpellier in French West Indies as well, and there are a number that occur. We also have the potential of impact from landslides. So, and as we said as well, with the distant tsunamis coming from Lisbon or Honga Tonga event, they have shown, and we have just published a paper which shows that there were increased tide. The tide gauges picked up a wave heights had increased after the Honga Tonga Tepai eruption. And of course, that happened in Asia, and we noted increase in our wave heights and our levels hours after here in the Caribbean. And we're looking to see how that can be attributed to, and they are monitoring based on the measurements across tide gauges, because this is an international system. So tide gauges internationally, seismic monitors internationally, all feed into the IOC monitoring facility. We also have US-based facilities, UK-based, Norway-based facilities, and all of our scientists are working and monitoring these events. So I just wanted to really assure you that, yes, and much of the science has indicated that the level of risk from the Kikimjeni is not as severe as we would think, and there's a higher risk from earthquakes that occur generally, and also distant tsunamis and regional other risks within the region as well. Okay, so thank you. At this point, I'm not seeing much anything else in the chat, so I think I will proceed as well. So moving on from the tsunami early warning systems. So after the 2004 Indian Ocean event, that accelerated the development of tsunami early warning systems globally, and this has been led by IOC. In the Pacific, they would have developed their system. This is over 60 years ago, but we have developed 3 other systems since the 2004 event. It's the Caribbean and adjacent regions, the Indian Ocean, and Northwestern Atlantic and Mediterranean. And the Tsunami Early Warning System is a member state-led organization. We call it our Intergovernmental Coordination Group for the Caribbean and adjacent regions. And we also have many of the regional partners, SEDEMA, Preparedness, the Seismic Research Center, CIMH, Fundvisis within Venezuela. We also have other UN agencies, UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, United Nations Development Program, as well as USAID, OFTA, well, now called BHA, and many of our other donors, European Commission, and so on. And out of the regions that are coordinating, the 4 global regions, ours in the Caribbean is somewhat of a unique process because ours is actually includes other coastal hazards. So it's a tsunami and other coastal hazards warning system for the Caribbean and adjacent region. So this slide essentially shows the global mechanism, as I discussed earlier, and these are all coordinated by IOC. And we do have the Caribbean pulled out at the bottom left of your screen. And in the Caribbean, we have 32 member states and 16 territories that make up our early warning system. So we serve 48 countries, member states, territories as well. So within the Caribbean, we have what we call a service model. And this model, one on the left of the screen, you will see that there are 4 components, and these are based on the early warning pillars that have been identified by the UNDRR as part of the Sendai framework for the global disaster risk reduction. So we look at risk knowledge, what is the knowledge? And some of you, as you indicated in your question about Kik and Jenny, that is where risk knowledge comes to bear. What is the nature of the hazard and so on? How does it behave? What is our risk? And knowing that information. I also spoke widely on detection, analysis, and forecasting. This is where we have our instrumentation, and our scientists and our partners are working assiduously behind the background to collect that information, to be able to go through the chain and the channel to advise us when a tsunami has occurred, and also advise us in more detail on some of the products, the expectations, when can we expect that the tsunami may impact us, what is the wave height, and so on and so forth. We also have warning, dissemination, and communication. And I have highlighted, these are pillars 3 and 4, and I've highlighted these. I've tried to do them in bold, underline, and shadow, because this is where you, the media, fit in pillar 3 and 4 in particular. So we look at warning, dissemination, and communication. And I think your role there, you would note, is very clear. And then also in preparedness, response, capability, and resilience, dealing with public education, awareness, the development of materials, covering events, and highlighting, promoting social media. What is the role of social media? What is the role of traditional media? All of those things we always have very frequent discussions on. And of course, I'm also very willing to hear from you today as to how maybe our partnerships can be enhanced. And we also have on the right of the screen, the Caribbean service model. So as I said to you, where you see our TSP, this is our regional tsunami service providers. And this is where, as it indicates at the top, we're monitoring. The information is coming out, the data and so on is being collated, and is done in terms of seismic level activity, in terms of the sea level. So I spoke of the tide gauges, the seismic monitors, and the global performance system, and we are monitoring. The regional tsunami service providers are conducting that role. For the Caribbean, our regional tsunami service provider is the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center out of Hawaii, that is hosted by the government of the United States. And we are also having an emerging regional tsunami provider, the Central American Tsunami Early Agency, and this is called CATAP. But I will also say that their role is quite limited. And as you know, I said we cover 48 member states and territories, and we have language consideration. And one of the roles that CATAC has very clearly set up within their own mechanism is to bring that translated information to the Central American countries that are predominantly Spanish speaking. So the PTWC does issue all of their products in English, and CATAC, led by the government of Nicaragua, has indicated that they're willing to start the very small steps as to how they can create their own tsunami service provider to serve that Central American region. And again, this is part of information sharing, the issue of translation of language, and also, levels of understanding. And that is way how we actually try to improve our system. So we have our very formal system. On the left-hand side, you will see that the regional tsunami service provider engages with our national tsunami warning centers and our tsunami warning focal points. So in every country in our region, there is a national tsunami warning center and or tsunami warning focal point. And this is where the information comes through the official channels from PTWC. They receive it. For many of our countries in the English-speaking Caribbean, those agencies are the Met offices, the disaster offices. They receive the information. In some countries, the fire service and the police service are also used. And I think you can understand and appreciate very clearly that there's a 24-hour mechanism that is needed. And those agencies provide that. We provide the training, we develop the SOPs, as you see in the blue lines, and we allow for those mechanisms to work, and they're tested. We also have, coming out from that interaction, once the National Tsunami Warning Center or the Tsunami Warning Focal Point receives that information from the regional service provider, they take action. And whether it is to just review, because oftentimes the initial message comes out generally within 5 to 7 minutes of an earthquake occurring, and the national agencies receive that information and they review. What I would also hasten to say is that we run a very sovereign system. So PTWC is not going to tell the Jamaica Meteorological Office or the Met Office in Trinidad that you need to issue XYZ. They're going to give them the factual information. They're going to give them the likelihood of a tsunami occurring. If it is detected, when would it occur, potential wave heights, and so on. And the national agencies have the sovereign right to issue the level of product that they require. Within our protocols, within our trainings and SOPs, we have developed generic information. So there's no need for the officer sitting there at 12 a.m. to sit and decide, okay, this says XYZ, what information do I send to the disaster office? What information do I send to the media? Everything is prescripted. There are parameters, there are criteria, and they know if these are the parameters that have been reached, this is the message that I issue. If these are not present, then I can issue something, or I can just leave it because it's unlikely, it's not estimated to reach us, but I can give an information statement. I can, depending on the protocols that are determined, I can issue an advisory. I can issue, whatever information, whatever statements they have in their protocols. And that SOP is where it actually allows for reaching the community in a very, this is the official way. But we also recognize that there's a need for the natural warning signs to be very much recognized by the public, because as I said, we can have local tsunamis. And if there is a local tsunami, it may reach the coastline within minutes and impact within minutes, even before PTWC can get that message to the National Tsunami Warning Centers or the Tsunami Warning Focal Point. So we run a dual system where we have our formal process, and this is really applicable, for example, in the regional tsunami or the distant tsunami, where we say we have time. Regional tsunami within the 1,000 kilometers, and the tsunami may reach you within 2 to 3 hours. There is some time. The local, the distant tsunami generally can impact after 3 hours, and there's time. The local tsunami can reach our populations within minutes. And this is where the recognition of the natural warning signs and also the role of the media continuously is very important. So I also wanted to highlight to you the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development 2021 to 2030. And this is also led by IOC, UNESCO. There are a number of outcomes that have been identified, and we are working within our tsunami early warning system within the region under a safe ocean. And that outcome that we hope to achieve by 2030 with all our partners on board is really where life and livelihoods are protected from ocean-related hazards. And in the safe ocean, the societal outcome that has been developed under the UN decade is the aim of making 100% of communities at risk to tsunamis prepared for and resilient to tsunamis by 2030. And this says through the implementation of the Tsunami Ready program, but we also recognize that there are other programs and initiatives also being led at the local and national levels that can support that level of preparedness for tsunamis. And of course, this is where we have our partnerships coming in with the media, with the tourism sector, with the education sector, with the communication sector, the IT sector. So what are some of the programs and activities under the regional early warning system, and how can the media support? So you've heard me speaking a bit about Tsunami Ready, and I did share this with you a little bit in terms of an actual, more or less, it was on a tiered level, but we also have our emblem as it relates to a circular level. And this is where communities, these are the 12 indicators, as we said, and these indicators span assessment, so the risk knowledge, mapping of the hazard and so on, the preparedness, as well as the response. So a community can be recognized at the national level, as I said, or the very local level. And we develop hazard maps. So for example, we have 2 tsunami ready communities in Grenada, and I'm currently working on a third one. The 2 communities that we've already recognized are the parish of St. Patrick and the parish of Petit Martinique and Carriacou. Where are they located? Very close to Kikumjeni. So we would have developed with partners and technical experts hazard map to show not only Kikumjeni, but again, our earthquake, the modeling that we've done for earthquake, looking at other volcanic activity, not only Kikumjeni, as I've said, and of course, landslides and other hazards as well. But the most developed section of our regional early warning system in terms of the hazard has been those tsunamis that are sourced from earthquakes. We are now developing more stringent and more robust assessments and products coming out from potential volcanic sources and also landslides. So we also look at the number of people at risk, the vulnerability of those people at risk, how many people are below the age of 16, how many people are over the age of 60, are there any disabled persons within these communities? So we would have done this, for example, as I said, for those parishes. In Jamaica, we have 1 community, Old Harbor Bay, that has fulfilled their indicators. In Barbados, we have 2 communities. The whole of St. Kitts and Nevis has been recognized. Anguilla has been recognized as a country, British Virgin Islands. And we've gone through this process for all of our communities. Even in Costa Rica, we have communities that have been recognized, Honduras, Nicaragua, and we've gone through this process. So looking at categorizing your populations, what are the resources within the community that can support the tsunami ready? And then we look at the evacuation map. Where are we taking these people to? So we look to see where the areas that are likely to be inundated, flooded in the event of a tsunami, and then where are the safe areas. The way we do this depends on the level of data that's available, but we can use as well what we call a bathtub method. If there's no data available for the country, all is not lost and we don't leave anyone behind. And we use what we call is our bathtub method, which is 1 kilometer inland, or the first, what we call our first ridge, which is 30 meters in height, sea level, over sea level, whichever one we get to first, whether a kilometer inland or the 30-meter contour, we designate assembly points or safe zones. But we don't only just say these are safe zones. We look to see how easy is it for the population to get here from the coastline. And if you remember, we spoke about persons moving by foot. So that is how we also look at it, because where there is a made-up road, that may take you around the highland area or around a long way to get out from the coastline, whereas there may be tracks, there may be stairs and so on that persons can use to get to safe areas. And we also advocate what we call vertical evacuation. So especially where there's a local tsunami and there's not a lot of time and you can actually see the wave coming right at the coastline, we are encouraging you get to the highest point, which may be the 3rd or 4th story of a well-constructed stone building. It may be a tree. In many of the impacts in Asia and other regions, lives have been saved by persons climbing trees. And so you know that when a hazard is, when there's a threat, you are going to analyze your situation very quickly and you are going to get to the highest point that you can. We also seek under preparedness 2 and 3, those indicators to get that information out there, get the tsunami signage up, get the education and outreach resources. So you would see brochures, flyers, various things on websites, also on social media postings and so on, coming from our disaster offices, our regional agencies, and also we carry out activities as well. So we encourage the community to hold a number of activities, talks, walks, just getting that information there. And of course, we have tsunami exercises as part of our preparedness. So many of you, I know from the media, because we do have the evidence that you cover the Caribbean Wave exercise, and our Caribbean Wave for 2024 is on March 21st. So if you have not been able to cover before or you're not aware, please, I have some resources that I will share with you as the PowerPoint becomes available, and that you can go on and get some information and do support your national agencies in the Caribbean Wave exercise. And then we also have response, and these are very formal plans, the standard operating procedures we would have discussed, looking at having a plan, having an emergency operations center within our communities, looking at what's the response capacity, building SOPs, and also having very distinct ways to receive the warning information and also disseminate it out to the public. For us in the region, we have 18 recognized communities and 13 member states that have been recognized under the UNESCO IOC Tsunami Ready program. There are currently 12 communities that we are working with to nominate or renew, because the Tsunami Ready program is not a one-shot. You have to be renewed every 4 years, because we have to keep that momentum going. Every 4 years, we're looking for developments. We're looking to make sure that the communities have maintained their signage, their maps, and so on. And I would also say that there's a US-based Tsunami Ready system, and that's where ours was developed from. And under this system, there are 49 communities in Puerto Rico and US Virgin Islands as well that are tsunami recognized. So this, I wanted to get into a little bit more of the meat of the matter as it relates to, and this is an example of the protocol and SOP for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you will see very highlighted in the peach on the left-hand side is the media. So we did say we get the information from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. It's sent down to our National Tsunami Warning Focal Point. And then based on their determination of the risk and what is the information that should be sent to the public, it goes respond to the media first because you know what your role is in the national protocols. And through social media, also they're looking at advocating national agencies and so on. A number of our community-based organizations, private sector, this information goes out. We also have in very, especially for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they have indicated the other key agencies that they use and the not only the agencies, but you will see the protocol also indicates what is the means of disseminating that information by phone, by text, by fax, by loudspeaker, by sirens, by VHF radio, and so on, and maritime radios, email, WhatsApp, phone calls. It is a very comprehensive system, as most of you would also appreciate. I also just wanted to share, in addition to the Tsunami Ready program, another annual activity that we carry out. This is our Carib Wave activity, and I would have mentioned the dates. And in this activity, we seek to embrace and ensure that all sectors of the community, the schools, the tourism, disabled, and so on, they are encouraged and they participate. In 2023, we had approximately 43 of our 48 member states participating with over 430,000 people engaged. And at the end of it, we often carry an evaluation exercise, and 90% of those persons would have engaged as part of the survey. We have noted some downtake though since COVID. In 2018, we had over 700,000 persons in the Caribbean participating in Caribbean Wave, and we are happy to say that within the world, every regional warning system, they have an exercise, but the Caribbean is the one that has the most population actually participating. So we intend to keep that up. This presentation will be made available, as I said, but we encourage the registration to be done by tsunamizone.org/CaribWave, and you can go there. And in our 2023 reports, we looked at the fact that we had over 1.8 million people worldwide being reached through our various social media platforms and so on. And every exercise, we also have a pre-prepared press release that communities and national authorities can also access and provide that support through the media. So another activity annually is our World Tsunami Awareness Day. That's convened every November 5th. And I just wanted to share with you our 2024 theme, empowering children, youth, ensuring that the next generation is tsunami prepared. So many of our emerging themes as we go through and we look at our early warning systems for all, I am just going to try to tie up very quickly so that I can have a little more time for discussion. We are looking at including disabled, the youth, the aged, women and men, and of course, any other sector. We also look at the indigenous groups and so on. So there are a number of sectors, and social integration is one of our key areas that we seek to embrace. So again, to emphasize the role of the media as we see it, and I'm interested to hear from you, under Pillar 3, warning, dissemination, and communication, the media is a key stakeholder in disaster risk reduction. You are critical to getting that official tsunami information out and warnings to the public. You do this through your media houses, social media. We depend on you to be creditable, dependable, reliable, and also to be a key measure of redundancy. Many of the member states have the Common Alerting Protocol, which you may be familiar with. Many agencies do have broadcast interrupts and so on, which we encourage, and we depend on the media to also support us in those protocols to get that information out. Under Pillar 4, we encourage you in terms of public education, covering the events, but also advising the public, having partnerships with member states, interns, other mechanisms. And we at CTIC, we encourage this, and definitely from you members of the media corporations, we are always interested in working with you to support our cause. And this also includes development of materials, updating and managing our website, and just generally partnering with us in terms of our activities. So please support the Caribbean Wave, the Caribbean EWS events as I outlined, Caribbean Wave, World Tsunami Awareness Day, or Tsunami Ready activities. And of course, talks, engagements, and so on as we go through our system. So I thank you very much. I have said a lot, and I hope I have not been boring. I don't know if there are any comments or questions on, okay, you would have put the comment reference to Kicks of Jenny. Thank you on the chat. And Madam Chair, I turn over to you for any comments or questions that participants may have.
Thank you very much, Alison. Yeah, we have some questions coming up. So let me get a microphone to our participants in the room. If there's anyone online who has questions, you could also raise your hand. But here's the first question from the room.
Go ahead.
We have three questions lined up in the room.
All right. Sorry. Brome? Yes. Could
Yes,
you hear me?
sir.
Okay.
I can hear you somewhat, and you may need to speak a little bit more into the microphone.
All right. I think you can hear me now.
Yes, thank you.
I'm speaking under correction, but did you say in 2010 there was a small tsunami did occur? Did you say that?
Yes, I did, Mr. Price.
I see. You know who I am. Where was this?
This was the Haiti earthquake, January 2010. And we have noted a smaller one coming out of the Honduras event as well, subsequent to that. But yes, there are a few centimeters in height.
Thank you.
So if you recall, sorry, I'll let you speak.
No, you go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I was just going to say that if you recall, I said we have this thought of tsunamis being these large, which they have definitely the capacity to be, but the mechanism of a tsunami is where the water is displaced by earthquakes, volcanoes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, meteors, and that displacement, when it reaches the coastline, causes elevation in the wave height. So sometimes that wave height can be centimeters. So sometimes when you see, I think we are better at it now, but sometimes when you see, for example, an earthquake would have occurred north of Antigua today, it was 6.8 magnitude on the scale and so forth and so on. And, you know, sometimes as you go through the PTWC messages, you may see, we didn't have any significant events last year, but you may see that a tsunami did occur, but it may be just a few centimeters. So it is not something that a person at the coast would register and so on, but they do occur.
We'll take another question, but we also had one in Trinidad a couple years ago in Maracas. It had flooded the car park.
Yes, so we are one of the communities that we're working with in Trinidad right now is the Mayaro community, the municipality. And we would have also conducted work, Tsunami Ready in Caranage, but we are aware, yes, that as well.
Okay, Chris.
Hi, Christopher Sergio from the Jamaica Gleaner. If I was covering this event, this is where I would send out my breaking news alert, because I found your presentation to be informative and confounding. And that is because whenever I have read of tsunamis, it was always somewhere else in the world, never in my region. So I found you were not boring, and I found it particularly interesting. You have also given me food for thought, because about 2 weeks ago, we had some serious waves down in Western Jamaica, where Montego Bay, our tourism capital, and everybody wrote about the big waves, the huge waves, but the idea of tsunami never came in. But now, I'm thinking, giving thought to that. And I look forward to, I'd love to do an interview with you. But when I do that interview, I know that people are going to think I'm crazy because in the Caribbean, we don't have tsunami.
So I started with that myth because, but we go back to Port Royal, 1692. Let us talk about Lisbon, 1700s. The evidence is there. The evidence is there. I think one of the things that we have to come to grips with and we face daily is because our current populations have never experienced. And when, for example, I can't say I get jealous, but for example, I said it in the initial stages, I am attending meetings at night, 8-hour meetings that are happening in Japan. I should have actually have been in Japan, but I decided to stay in the Caribbean and do this presentation. No, I couldn't go in the end. So one of the things though that I'm saying is that is where we meet annually, all of the 4 early warning systems that I spoke about: Pacific, the Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Northeastern and Atlantic and Mediterranean. We meet annually, and our meeting this year is in Japan. In the Indian Ocean in particular, they're creating such very vivid and very interesting resources. They have survivor stories, tell the tales, XYZ, because they have experienced tsunamis, and sometimes it's an annual event. And so they go off and do videos with survivors, and it becomes very real, as you said, in the Caribbean. So that when we actually have to showcase our resources, I'm like, okay, well, I just have factual information and, that kind of thing. And not that I want a tsunami to occur, but I'm just saying that they as you said, how do we get our populations to be very sensitized? But we do have occurrences that we need to highlight a little more, and we need to maybe find very innovative ways of highlighting the impacts. British Virgin Islands, US Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, they have been impacted. 1946, Dominican Republic, we have been impacted, and lives have been lost. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. Well, I was going to ask about this huge wave situation we had just a few weeks ago in Montego Bay and Negril and our tourist area, really Western. And that was due to a cold front, and it came out of nowhere. And some people actually who saw it thought it was a tsunami because it was up to about 10 feet high waves. So, but when I recently asked the head of the Met Service, what about tsunamis, he kind of said that wasn't their area of concern because it's not actually a weather issue. So, and that leads me to my question, sorry. Where can we find a list of all the right contact people for each territory in the Caribbean? Whether it's Met Service or emergency, is there a list somewhere online, or do you?
Okay. So what I would say, and I smile because this has been a discussion we had a number of years ago, where it was thought that it was necessary to highlight the system. And I still think there's some validity there. But because of the nature of what our National Tsunami Warning Centers do, or Tsunami Warning Focal Points do, it's somewhat of sensitive information. And the list that we have does include personal cell phones, et cetera. It's not, I should say personal, but cell phone numbers and so on. What I would say to you is that nationally, and as a key member of you have generally nationally, you have your standing committees, you have your national emergency, the NUOCs and so on, where I'm sure the media is a very key stakeholder and you have access to all of your authorities. That may be the area that you have to engage in nationally. So you did say you spoke to the head of the Jamaica Met Service, who is Mr. Ivan Green, I believe it. Okay, so maybe you need to have a bit more discussion because there are rules for Jamaica Met Services, but I don't know what was the full context, and I'm not at liberty to have the detailed discussion. But as I said, we have a system of national tsunami warning centers and focal points, and the role of the focal point is really to, I will stop sharing my screen to some extent so that I can perhaps give a little more clarity as I go through. The role of the tsunami warning focal point is really to take that message and refer it to the warning center. And so therefore, in saying that, the Met Office may not be in its wrong because their role might be just to pass on the message because it's a 24-hour system that we require so that the message can be received nationally and that system can go through the process. But there are very specific rules for the Tsunami Warning Focal Point and the National Tsunami Warning Center. So I would encourage you to go to the ODPEM as well as the Met Services to get more clarity internally about their particular system as well. But we do have a number of Met Services that do provide a high measure of support in our system, as I said, primarily because of the 24-hour. I am not. You have a follow-up question or comment?
Yes, I just wanted to know, as journalists, where does each journalist, say in Antigua, Jamaica or wherever, go to the first stop? Where would they go? You keep mentioning the tsunami warning centers, but where are they? I'm sure nobody in this room knows where the island's tsunami warning center is or who they are or where. That's my point, really.
Okay, so we have a system, it's a two-tiered system. There's a regional service provider who is the regional warning center, which is the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. And then nationally, each country, territory, etc., has a measure of a national system in place. Usually, they also have what we call a tsunami national contact. That is the agency in country that liaises with UNESCO IOC. So usually it's a disaster office that can best support you as the media because they definitely will have their protocols developed. They will be able to guide you in terms of how the message is received and which agency provides that message. So in some countries, for example, and I would say Barbados, I will give the example of Barbados. Barbados has a tsunami warning focal point and a national tsunami warning center. And those are that's the Barbados Met Service. So they receive the message and they also have responsibility for issuing that message to the public. We have the Department of Emergency Management, who also is part of the SOP and will be in consultation. Met Services will consult with the national agency, the Department of Emergency Management, and before they issue the warning to the public, unless it is, and I don't want to get into too much of the detail because in many of the countries, the system is varied, but I would just say that there are mechanisms for consultation. And where time is short, there are mechanisms generally for a direct communication with the public because at the end of the day, public safety is paramount. So your two agencies, in some of our member states, for example, Dominica, there's no Met Service. And therefore they depend very highly on the disaster office, as well as police, fire, St. Vincent, as I showed you that protocol, because it's online, they depend very much on their disaster office and the police and fire because there's no Met services. Their Met services come from Barbados. So there are some intricacies within our system, which I think you can also appreciate. So it is best, but the disaster office is generally the office that will provide that level of guidance to you. And the media is part of the, generally the early warning and the NEOC response agencies when there is an event. So you need to be more aware so that you can, in the event of that, you have to carry out your role in terms of the SOPs that generally is there. And we always encourage, as part of Carib Wave, as part of World Tsunami Awareness Day, to get that information out, have your talks, have your webinars and so on. And one of the gentleman from Jamaica Gleaner has indicated about interview with me. We also support through webinars and so on. So just like this one to your media, and this is regional media, we can also support your national media, and we are quite willing and happy to do so.
Thanks for that, Alison. One more, last one, and then we close the session.
Very well.
Then. All right, good afternoon, Mr. Room. Ursil Charles Jr. here, ABS TV Radio out of Antigua. Two-part. We work very closely with the National Office of Disaster Services in Antigua, and we promote the Carib Wave events. Most people in Antigua know, because of the media, where the muster points are, so where you gather in case of a tsunami. But participation in the drills is usually very low, unfortunately. They just want to know where to go, and so they don't participate. How do you suggest that we get more people to be, when it comes to, participating in the drills, going through the process? And two, as recertification is coming up this year, it's 4 years since Antigua got its certification. What exactly are you looking for? What do we need to do?
You're very informed, sir. Thank you. It brings a smile to my face. So I will probably, I'm just making a note in terms of your renewal. So thank you very much. And as I said, it's very heartening to see that. For the Caribbean Wave, we have as I said, we have our tsunamizone.org website where persons can also go on and register. So we do note that the lead agency would be the disaster agency, or in Barbados, we also have a coastal zone management agency, and they do walks, they do public awareness and education as well, and they support the disaster agency. Really, it is partly of the, we try to promote it on various social platforms and so on, but nationally it's the disaster office that leads. And we have promoted and we've tried to encourage involvement in the schools. So we try to get the schools very involved in the Caribbean Wave, because we know that once that happens, children go home, they're preparing for this exercise and they're telling their parents from day one. We encourage them to have family plans, and we encourage businesses to have family plans. We also encourage the disaster office to have in their mainstreaming target hotels, target tourism sectors, target the ports, target critical infrastructure. And we also do this as part of our Tsunami Ready program. And we also do this as part of the World Tsunami Awareness Day theme. So you would notice from time to time our themes may be critical infrastructure, disabled persons, and now this year we're looking at the youth. So it's really the disaster office, but those are some of the areas. And of course, you as the media, you can support in highlighting and promoting. I attended a workshop in Antigua and Barbuda in November, early warning systems for all workshop. And we met as well, education sector, disabled and so on. We promoted there. And as part of our regional system as well, we promote every year in our annual meetings. But as a regional organization, we can only provide the support to that end. Sovereign dictates that national agencies will take on board. So I would encourage you to have a discussion with Mr. James. It may be a little late for the 2024 because it's in 3 weeks, but as to how you may promote, and you don't have to only conduct your exercises in March because there's a handbook, and the handbook has the scenarios and everything pre-positioned for the disaster office and for any agency, media, even in your own media houses that you can execute your protocols and so on as well. So it can be done at any time of the year. It can be done at World Tsunami Awareness Day in November. And we encourage you to do that. And it doesn't always have to be drills. As I said, it can be walks. It can be just highlighting some of the signage and so on various websites and social media platforms. So you touched a little bit on the renewal of the Tsunami Ready, and I did speak to the fact that it's a 4-year program in terms of the validity of the recognition. So in 2020, I believe it was, we would have recognized the city of St. John's as Tsunami Ready in Antigua and Barbuda. And yes, your time is up. So I have been engaging, as I said, from November last year. We have spoken to NODS, and we are looking to see how best we can support that renewal process. In traveling a bit, we recognize some of the signs are a little dated, and some areas we might need to, they wanted to do a little top up of their maps and maybe have a little more analysis of the safe zones and so on. So those are the kind of improvements that we have been discussing, and we have initiated the process of renewal. And I would also say that we are also initiating through our partners, USAID, Bureau of Humanitarian Affairs, a new community in St. John's to be recognized as Tsunami Ready for 2024. So I'm not at liberty to say which community because we are looking at really the data availability and so on at this stage, but we are hoping to recognize by the last quarter in 2024.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Ms. Alison Brome, thank you for taking the time. I think you're going to be very busy with phone calls and people
That's
wanting
fine.
to. So I'm putting you on the alert, but thank you so much for doing such an invaluable presentation and bringing the awareness to us. And we in turn will ensure that the sensitivity is created throughout the region among our public. So thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, and have a good afternoon, everyone. And I'll be sure to send the presentation with some additional resources, and I look forward to engaging. Thanks also to Ms. Sonia Gill at CBU for initiating. It has been a pleasure.